Again, and please feel free to introduce yourself into the chat box, your name and organization if you'd like. And then if you could self-mute yourself, that would be best. It'll help with the background noise. And then when there are questions, you can unmute to ask questions or make comments. If there's too much background noise, I probably will end up self-muting everybody. And so just to remind everyone of the 8 volunteer management practices, I've listed them here. VGF and RCAF grantees are probably very familiar with these, as organizations had to opt into them, these practices during the application process. These are the 8 steps or functions for effectively managing volunteers. Volunteer Florida Hopes grantees are using these as a guideline to effectively engage and track their skills-based volunteers and to increase organizational volunteer practices. The webinar series will cover topics based off of these 8 practices, and it comes from Volunteering Reinvented with CNCS. And so if you were to type in Volunteering Reinvented, you would get the PDF version that CNCS has published. And today's topic is recruitment of skills-based volunteers and unique opportunities, and it's brought to you by Lonnie Wellman, the Volunteer and Event Manager for St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lonnie.
Thank you very much, Audrey. All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys very much. My name is Lonnie Wellman, and I'm the Volunteer and Events Manager at St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. I've been working in museums for about 10 years, and I real quick, like I said, I've been in museum industry for about 10 years. I'm currently the Volunteer and Events Manager at the Lighthouse, but prior to the Lighthouse, I worked in art museums, history museums, science centers, children's museums, and pretty much any kind of museum that exists. In 2014, a colleague and myself presented at AAM, which is the American Alliance of American Alliance of Museums, and we presented on e-volunteering, which I will discuss definitely later about our e-volunteering program. But basically, what we did was we found unique opportunity where volunteers had presented themselves. And we did a presentation on the e-volunteering, and a representative from Roman and Littlefield saw that and asked us to write a book on e-volunteering. And there's absolutely not enough about e-volunteering to fill a book. So then we decided to create a book on recruiting and managing volunteers in museums, which is literally the title of the book. So a few of the things that we've got in there I will be discussing a little bit, but I do want to have a nice little disclaimer that just because I wrote a book on that, I'm still a volunteer manager. I still have all of the challenges that everybody else has, and just because you know what's a good practice doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to go that way. You can go to the next slide. All right, so little honesty. prior to receiving the VGF grant from Volunteer Florida, I don't know that I ever really thought much about skills-based volunteering. We definitely have skills-based volunteers here at the St. Augustine Lighthouse, but actually knowing what it was and going about the recruitment a different way was definitely something new to me. So I just kind of wanted to put up the definition of skills-based volunteering for anybody. I still usually have to remind myself about it as well. So skills-based volunteering means leveraging the specialized skills and talents of individuals to strengthen the infrastructure of nonprofits, helping them build and sustain their capacity, successfully achieving their missions. They are volunteers that come to an organization with a certain set of skills, and then it's our jobs to find out how we can use them best. All right, next slide. All right, so while I got you here, I do like to have kind of a conversation with you all. If you could take a few minutes and think about some skills-based volunteers in your organization. I know some of you are with the VGF grant, so that's definitely something that would be required. But I'd like to hear from you if anybody would like to chime in and hear some of the unique opportunities that you have at your organization. Anybody want to be first?
Everybody is unmuted, or if you self-muted, you could use the chat box if you'd like.
This is Tanya Reynolds from the Learning for Success organization, otherwise known as CAPAL. And we have some fairly unique opportunities for our volunteers to use their skills and volunteer. All of our volunteers are professionals, so they're using their background in what they're doing in their jobs to actually volunteer in our program. And a good majority of them are also teachers. So our volunteers are, whenever they're, mentoring in our program and working with kids, which is our target audience is students, second grade all the way through middle school or 8th grade, our volunteers are always using their skills and their talents to teach our program to our students, whether they're professionals from the community or whether they're teachers in the school system. They're always using their skills. And that is one of the unique things that we kind of pride ourselves on in our program, because we tell when we're recruiting for volunteers, we're always seeing that we give the volunteers a platform to use their skills and their talents, to share their wisdom when they're actually teaching the program to students. So they like the fact that they can use their background and their experience and their job experience and their teaching experience to be a success in our program. So that's the unique opportunities that we have that we're always tapping into whenever we recruit teachers or volunteers who are professionals.
Is there anyone else I'd like to share? That's wonderful. I know I've met you a couple times and love learning about what you do at CAPAL.
This is Lauren Wolf. I'm with UMCM Suncoast over in St. Pete. And similar to CAPAL, we also have a significant number of volunteers who are teachers. And a lot of them work tutoring folks learning how to speak English. So they may not have experience tutoring adults, but we build on their skills with empathizing, with cultural awareness, things like creating a welcoming classroom and a hospitable experience for students when they come in, as well as classroom enrichment. Something it's kind of funny that we found is it doesn't matter what age you're teaching, games and field trips, things like that, everyone's going to enjoy them. So we have our volunteers put a lot of creativity into the classes that they teach with adults. And then they also get the opportunity to teach each other best practices when we do our own trainings where all the volunteers come together and they help train each other.
Wonderful, thank you. I see we've got something in the chat as well. I'm just going to read it. We have experts in our core academic subjects. We also have volunteers who just wish to mentor and be a role model to our students. That's really great. Is there anybody else that wants to share before we move on?
Hi, this is Deborah Leach-Scampavia from the Boys and Girls Clubs of Palm Beach County. And we also have some wonderful corporate partners because we're an after-school program. We will have organizations like Lockheed Martin, some of the banking organizations that will come in after school that bring their professional knowledge in finance, mathematics, engineering, and they're adding that skills base to some of our 21st century programs and also some of their own programs that they're designing. So it adds a wonderful dynamism between the working professionals and the after-school programs, and it really sort of enhances how the kids can apply the lessons from school into some of the professional applications. So we're very fortunate there.
That's great. And yeah, we're going to talk about corporate partnerships towards the end, but yeah, having that already is a wonderful fountain of help and information. I think it's everybody done. We can go to the next slide. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the skills-based volunteers that we have at the St. Augustine Lighthouse. We've got, obviously we're a lighthouse, so we require volunteers to be at the base of the tower, the top of the tower, anytime we're open. So right now we're open from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m., so there needs to be somebody at both the base and the top of the tower. Some of the skills-based volunteers that we have for that have been, as many people have said, past teachers. We actually have one of our tower volunteers is former superintendent for the national parks, so being able to use her is wonderful. We've also had firefighters or retired firefighters that work at the base or the top of the tower, because we do have safety is a big important thing when it comes to our tower. Not only are we giving information on history, but we're also looking for any kind of symptoms of heat stroke, making sure that, you know, at the top and the base, that everybody is safe, because it's a very long fall to the bottom. We also have an underwater archaeology program. So we dive on shipwrecks in the summertime. We actually have worked on a 1782 British Revolutionary War shipwreck for the last few years. We've had that in our exhibits now. But so for when it comes to skills-based, we need divers and boat captains, and those are volunteers. Last year, our research vessel was much smaller than what we're used to, and so we were able to use volunteers to basically volunteer their boats for us to do the dive season. We also use our skills-based volunteers in our accounting department. We do have two amazing ladies in our accounting department, and we have some volunteers who are retired CPAs or retired in that area that can help with our finances. It's one of those, I've never been well at accounting, so when they ask me what to do, I mean, they know more about it than I do. And it's very nice, especially when we get into our busy season, having extra hands helping. We actually have one of our employees out for a little bit, so I know that our volunteers are definitely helping. We also use volunteers for data entry. And this can be something that's not skills-based, but generally when I am looking for someone for data entry, I'm looking for somebody who is in that field or has been in that field before. It's less, you know, training, and we actually keep track of our hours by volunteer entering them, and that's something that they can do from home. We also have our behind-the-scenes docents. Our behind-the-scenes tours are an added value to our visitors. They are not extra, and so we do have people who are teachers, people that have been in the public, that are not afraid or timid. And then we do still have some volunteers that maybe have never been in the spotlight before that want to try to do the behind the scenes. And, you know, of course we will train and get them in a comfortable position. to do so, but mostly if you're coming in and wanting to be a behind-the-scene docent, you're probably have already been in that kind of position before. We also have our boat building program. So we have our heritage boat builders are building wooden boats from boats that have been built in the past, so basically saving the heritage boat building piece of history. Boats aren't made from wood anymore. They're made from fiberglass and plastic. So we have boat builders that come on, and a lot of them have a woodworking background, either built boats on their own or have been carpenters or something like that. The boats they build, they then raffle off, and then the money goes back into the program and back into the lighthouse. I'm going to skip over the teen volunteer real quick to research. We have some volunteers who are very meticulous in their past lives, and they will do some research for us when we need it. And then also board members, we are volunteers. I believe we have 16 board members right now. And we've been able to use their expertise in many things, such as our new strategic plan. You know, we've got some that are attorneys, so they actually are able to volunteer their time to the Lighthouse. So finding skills-based board members to help the organization move along is also very beneficial to both the volunteer and the organization. And then finally, our teen volunteers, which might seem like a odd type of volunteer because they may come to you fresh and without skills. However, we've got a program at a school near us that is a hospitality focused high school, and so we've had a few of those teens want to come and volunteer with us, learning the ropes of hospitality. They've been helping with the base and the top of the tower. We also have teen volunteers that help with our summer camps as well. And any time that I'm talking, you feel free to stop me if you have any questions, but we can go on to the next slide. And these are just a few pictures of our skills-based volunteers. You can see one of our volunteers who's on top of the tower. The two ladies holding the brick were, they help with our accounting as well as data entry. Of course, we have our underwater archaeologists, our boat builders, and one of our archaeologists cracking into a concretion that was brought up from the bottom of the ocean. Go on to the next slide. So if you're here, you obviously are interested in recruiting skills-based volunteers for your organization. You probably already have some, but I was wondering if we could just break out real quick and ask, what are some of the challenges you're facing in recruiting skills-based volunteers for your organization? If anybody would like to jump in, just go right ahead.
This is Deborah again from the Boys and Girls Clubs in Palm Beach County, and I would say that a challenge is the process of recruiting. Quite often someone will show interest, maybe you'll be talking to a college student or a particular college or university, and although there's interest, is sort of keeping that interest alive and promoting it and sort of getting things going. Sometimes there's a gap between I'd really like to do this and I'm ready to start doing this, so I don't know if anyone has a lovely incentive program, or it's a process. I realize that. And then the other challenge, of course, is to retain those wonderful volunteers and help them stay invested in the process.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm just writing this all down, making sure that I answer all these questions. Is there anybody else that would like to share some of the challenges?
Something that we've been struggling with this year, and this is Lauren again from UMCM Suncoast. Our programs have been in transition. Some of them just began this year. Some began in the 1980s, but have just been modernizing and moving in new directions. And we've been struggling a little bit with making sure that our current volunteers still feel like they are a valuable and important part of the programs while they're modernizing. And also trying to bring new volunteers into a program where everything is not necessarily in place yet. And I keep hearing folks talk to me about the chicken and the egg, and how they have all these ideas for programming that they want to do, but they need the volunteers for it. But then when we bring in volunteers and the program isn't in place yet, the volunteers can very quickly either get burned out or just feel like they'd like to come back later once everything is organized, which I understand very much. So yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to move forward in the midst of a lot of transition.
Absolutely, and I can feel for you in that spot. We're actually building some new buildings right now, so our boat building area has been closed down for a week. It looks like it's going to be closed down for another week. I've got new people that are interested in to start with our boat building program, but having, hoping not to lose that motivation because they have to wait a couple weeks, and also, yeah, trying to figure everything out, still keep recruiting even though there's not necessarily a spot yet right now. I can completely understand and feel for you in that one.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else I would like to share?
This is Tanya Reynolds from Learning for Success, and I think two challenges we have is one, when we tell our volunteers that the program requires them to give at least a 1-year commitment, we do have people who are interested, and they follow through and they stay with the program for the 1 year, which is really the entire school year, which is 10 months. But we have a very small percentage of volunteers who they commit at the beginning of the year, but life happens in between, and they may be transferred to another job or a different department or out of state or lose their job, and they leave. We tell them that they can stay with us, but because of their job responsibilities and the time that it takes to commit to the program, they don't want to continue because they don't want to do a bad job, and so they just feel like it's too much, and so they either tell us that they're leaving or they don't tell us that they're leaving. So we find out by somebody else, and then we have to recruit someone to take their spot. It doesn't happen too much, but we do have volunteers who say, I'm interested, I'm all there, I want to do it, but they actually don't. And we want volunteers, we tell them up front, we say, be upfront with us. If you can't do it, it's no problem. We can find ways to help you. But if you can't commit, you need to let us know, because we take it very seriously with our program that when we recruit a volunteer, we want them to stay and finish the program. So we try to set the expectations very nicely, and 99% of them follow. But then there are that small 1% that because of whatever happens, they don't follow through.
Absolutely, and I think that's just the nature of the beast. And that's wonderful that you've got 99% that you feel have been following through, and there's always going to be that 1% that doesn't know exactly what they signed up for, or like you said, new job, new responsibilities, and things in that nature. I'm going to read from the a hindrance on your program. Is there anybody else that would like to speak before we move on to the next slide? All right. Oh, sorry. I think that's it. Audrey, if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great.
It's on the next slide. Can you hear me, Lonnie?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so when it comes to recruitment, where to find volunteers, this is us at a lovely job volunteer intern fair. You can see we bring lots of collateral, as well as you can see where it says flip-flops free to a good home. We actually, to enter them into getting the flip-flops, they have to give us their name and email address and all that so that I can email them later about all the wonderful volunteer opportunities we have at the Lighthouse. So some of the avenues that I go down to recruit volunteers is advertisements. And by advertisements, I don't mean that you have to pay for the advertisement, but you can contact local newspapers. Sometimes they have an entertainment section and post if you're having a recruitment event or if you have a need for volunteers. Not too long ago, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, we had somebody donate a bunch of ship models, specifically one that was not finished. So we had to find volunteers to finish the ship model, and literally it was one article in the newspaper, and we had people like beating down the door to try to help finish this ship model. It's also social media. That's another free way. And then volunteer organizations. We're lucky in that we have an organization in town called Volunteer St. John's, but you can also use Volunteer Match. They can be virtual or brick and mortar in your community. Just get the word out of what you need. Some people, you know, I know for us, there are people that don't even know that we use volunteers at the Lighthouse, or don't know that it's actually an opportunity until they come and visit, or they meet a volunteer out in the community and had no idea that this was even an option. An open house is a great way to find volunteers. You can have an open house at your organization, which is a great time. You can give tours and have like a one place where everybody is to fill out applications and everything like that. Have all the volunteer opportunities that you have listed on your website, because that's where people are going to go to find more information about you. The first place is going to be your website. Job, volunteer, intern fairs. I usually go to a couple of the job/intern fairs at the local colleges, and yeah, I'll tell them that this is intern. We are not able to we are not able to pay our interns, so making sure that is known up front. Difference in a day, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, that has to do with corporate relationships. And then membership, whenever I have a volunteer need, I can send it out to our members, people that have shown interest in us. And then literally anywhere that you go or other people in your organization, have a nice little packet made up. If someone's talking about something that might not even be about volunteerism, I'm sure there is a way for it to be tied in, and they can have these little packets and go out into the community with them. So if somebody does come up and ask them, or that they're interested in getting involved, they're not left with empty hands. You know, sometimes you can pass on a card and say contact so-and-so, but if you're able to have this nice packet to give to them when they are ready to go, that might help keep that ball rolling. And Aubrey, if you can go to the next slide. Slowly transitioning for me. Is it stuck on your end?
It shows that it's
Okay. There we go. Perfect. All right, so in this corner, we have a group from the Junior Service League who are, we're working on a gardening area. Down we have a group from Florida Blue who were cleaning up our boatworks area, which had gotten a little into disarray. And then we also have a college group, Lindsey Wilson College. They're actually from Kentucky, and they come down 1 week a year in the spring, their spring break, and volunteer their time at the Lighthouse. These are all great, and the reason I wanted to pull these out specifically is these are all great places to meet the skill-based volunteers. A long time ago, volunteerism was a little bit different. There's definitely been a paradigm shift when it comes to what the volunteer is looking for. Before, and we still have a few of our volunteers here at the Lighthouse that are from that kind of mentality of they're here to serve the Lighthouse and nothing more. But a lot of the volunteers that are coming in the last 5 to 6 years have been not necessarily saying what's in it for me, but also what's in it for me. They want to be able to show off the fact that they did something. It is a social media world. So difference in a day projects are a great way to get that corporate volunteer to notice your organization. I have contacted different human resources departments and explained the amazing time that their volunteers would have, even though it's sweaty and they're cleaning up wood, but also letting them know it's team building. It's a free team building program that they can do that gets them outside and at a historic, community center. And so I've actually had 2 volunteers come off from the Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the difference in a day with our junior service league, we've got a lot more repeat volunteers. Instead of just coming for the difference in the day, they'll come and do things on a weekly basis. And we can go to the next slide. Now, you don't have to answer. I just want you to think about any businesses that you can solicit for a difference in the day program. We're in St. Augustine, Florida, and there's not much industry when it comes to large corporations. We do have Northrop Grumman, that's a little bit north here. We have Jacksonville, has a lot of industry. However, Jacksonville, it deals a lot with Jacksonville organizations. I came from Memphis, Tennessee, which has FedEx home base there, AutoZone home base there, Terminex, ServiceMaster, a bunch of different ones, and we were able to it was easy. It was fish and program. Like I said, Florida Blue, obviously not headquarters in St. Augustine, but they were able to send representatives out to the area. So just because you're not in a metropolitan area that has a lot of industry does not mean that you're not able to use these these corporate volunteers. And we can go on to the next slide. All right, so now we're on to the recruitment. I am the type of person who I like to say that I manage expectations. I know that there have been people in my position in the past who may have overpromised things to volunteers, and I just feel that is just setting everybody up for failure. So the first step for recruitment is, if you have a job, if you have a position, please write up a job description. This is very important. It's so that not only do you and your organization know what you're expecting of these volunteers, but the volunteers know what they're expecting before day one. I'm a huge proponent of these, and it gives everybody a clear and concise idea of what is expected. There are a lot of people that promise different incentives, and we're not not one of those people. We do have incentives for people who volunteer. For instance, our volunteers can get a membership, which then gives them a discount in the store. They also can get free admission to other organizations in town, but they are not able to receive those until after volunteering a certain amount of hours. So while having these kind of different incentives can catch the eye of a new volunteer, it's the clear expectations that they already know, so they're not being set up to fail, that will help keep them. So this is an example of a job description. And in it, disclose any unique skills or abilities that a candidate needs. And for instance, we have our boat building program, and we do have in our boat building job description, experience working with wood, experience working with safely with power tools. And that's just, again, so we're not setting up these people for failure. If volunteers come and feel like A, they can't contribute, or B, that they're wasting someone's time, they will show up one time. So letting everybody know what is expected is definitely a help when it comes to recruitment. And then also adding if there will be training provided if necessary. And does the candidate need special equipment or certifications? If you can go to the next slide, we do have, like I said, underwater archaeologists, and they do require to be divers. And sometimes we require them to be master divers if we need that. And I just wanted to pull this up and show you kind of what our job description is, what we use. If anybody, if your organization doesn't have a job description or a standard system for it, please feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call. I'd be happy to share any kind of forms that we use here to help out. When it comes to creating this job description, it's not something that I do solely on my own. I get with different departments of whatever department needs this certain volunteer. I have them write up responsibilities so that I can kind of plug it into this job description. So in the job description, obviously the title, who the volunteer would report to, and the department that the volunteer would be in, as well as a job summary. Now this is a skills-based volunteer job description for a grants and funding researcher. And so we have the job summary there, responsibilities and qualifications. So of course we want office suite, good organizational skills, detail-oriented, essential functions and physical requirements. Everybody here at the St. Augustine Lighthouse has to be able to climb the tower. And that's just so that if there is an emergency, people get called out, we're able to have our tower open. As well as support our mission statement, which is to discover, preserve, present, and keep alive the stories of our nation's oldest port, symbolized by a working St. Augustine Lighthouse. When you have this job description already done and ready, you can then post that to different volunteer boards, post it pretty much anywhere around town if you want. And it's really the backbone of recruiting a volunteer, in my opinion. You can go to the next slide. Thank you very much. So the next part of recruiting, and I'd like to say, and we kind of touched on this, just getting a volunteer in the door does not mean you have the volunteer. I think Deborah mentioned that there seems to be a gap. The challenging is between recruiting and starting, there is a little bit of gap, and they may either lose interest or lose steam. So treat every single step as recruiting. The interview, and then also as well, once it's over, once you've got them and signed them, you're still continuously letting them know that they're important, and still, they could leave at any time, and we want to make sure that they don't. So when it comes to interviewing, when you're talking to them, they are interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. I like to say that the only thing that you can give and not get back is time, and that's what the volunteers are doing. They're not writing a check. They're not, what they're giving is something that's so precious that is something that they will never get back. So letting them also make sure that they're a good fit with you is really important. So discuss the typical day-to-day and workflow. Will the volunteer be working as part of a team? And are there daily timetables to follow? It's also important to discuss how the volunteer will benefit the institution. Sometimes just last night, I had 4 or 5 volunteers come and stay late and help stuff envelopes for our membership department. And to them, they're nurses and real estate agents, and they have no idea what them spending 2 hours folding a bunch of membership cards to send out would do for us. But letting them know that, one, you're saving time of staff members to be able to do what they're hired to do, and 2, the membership really does help support the Lighthouse. So letting them know that what they're doing is beneficial. It might seem to you that it's kind of like, of course it's beneficial. Now I don't have to do it, but it's hard sometimes for other people to see that perspective. Also, what is your measure of success? How will this activity build the organization's reputation, budget or operations, visitorship, and program offerings, and the organization's mission? So letting them all know of the importance of what they're doing and how it is helping really will give them pride in being a part of the situation. And is this part of a series of events that will benefit the organization? And then discuss where or how the skills advertised will be used. So if you're asking for specific skills and skills-based volunteers in the interview process, let them know how their skills will be used in the job or activity. You can go to the next. I'm sorry?
Go over, Lonnie, on your side.
I'm sorry? Yeah, it's coming through right now.
Okay.
There we go. Got it. All right, so when training, like I said, recruitment is a constant a constant thing that's happening. So then we go into the training. You can see we have Chris in this picture. He is one of our divers. He actually started out as an intern in our collections department, saw what the divers were doing. So after he finished his internship, started volunteering with them, became scuba certified, and here he is actually volunteering as a field school supervisor, monitoring the students as they go through our underwater, I guess it's a kind of an obstacle course to make sure that they're able to dive in the murky waters of St. Augustine. So when you're training, this is a part where it can get kind of slippery, especially if you're having a big project and especially if you're bringing on a bunch of new volunteers. You just don't want to let anybody slip through the cracks, because once you do, it's hard to get them back. So be sure to provide all material necessary to the volunteering for training. So we've got job descriptions that I give to each volunteer. I've got a volunteer manual. Again, I'd be happy to share any of this with you guys. We have our volunteer manual that has all of our job descriptions in the back. Depending on the job, they would also get different manuals. So our behind the scenes to our docents would give a specific manual that our director of interpretation has made. Our base and tower get another specific manual. So while a bunch of information is in the handbook, then each department has something, or each job has something that's more specific. We also have a place on our website that we were able to put a lot of information about the Lighthouse, and it is an online kind of training tab. It's not something that can be seen from our regular visitor that would come to the Lighthouse website, but it is part of the website, and I send that link out to potential volunteers or volunteers as they're waiting to be interviewed or waiting for a position to open up, so that they can start to learn a little bit more about the Lighthouse. There's different safety videos on that. And I feel like that keeps the ball rolling in their excitement as they learn more and more about what we do. Discuss emergency response procedures, if any, for which the volunteer is responsible for. We do have, like I said, of course, our divers have to be trained in emergency response procedures, but we also have, like I said, our basis have to be trained in how to deal with that, because we sometimes have the people from Wisconsin who are not used to our heat, who maybe have had a few drinks the night before, start to climb up the tower and get a little dizzy. We then need to be put into motion on how to deal with that. So, excuse me, letting the volunteer know if there is any kind of emergency response procedures, so they're not surprised or overwhelmed by that. I always recommend making sure that the volunteers have the hands-on experiences during the training so they can be effective team members once the project or assignment starts. And the way I do this is I have all of our volunteers job shadow before they officially sign on. Of course, those hours that they do shadow do count, but for instance, for our tower or our base, I will have volunteers come for an hour first. And if they're interested after that hour, then we can continue on with the training procedure. My fear is I don't want somebody to come in and shadow somebody for 2.5 hours and hate every single minute of it, because not only they have a bad experience with us, then also that is projecting onto our guests. So I always like to keep it to about an hour, and if that keeps them excited, then we go on to the 2.5 hour training procedures. Our boat builders, they have to learn about power safety tools before we can put a power tool in their hand. And but our different jobs do obviously, especially in the Florida heat, require different types of safety training. We can go on to the next slide. And I'm almost done, so we'll make it to the 3 o'clock mark. All right, so while on assignment, again, recruitment is still happening. It's always happening. While on assignment, regularly check in with the volunteers. It might seem easy. It might seem okay, they're smart, they know what they're doing, but they're going to need to know that A, you appreciate them, and B, that you're there if they have any questions. I know that that is a challenge of volunteer management, in that sometimes it takes a longer time to train them to do something that you could do easily before, and I know that's a lot of us probably feel that way, but regularly checking in after you've trained the volunteer, because just think, if you train them once or teach them once, then that's a nice pile off of your desk. And then also perform reviews in the middle and end of a project if you're getting volunteers for a specific project. And if the project or program is ongoing, set review time. So every 6 months or every year. And on the next slide, I have an example of our evaluation. If you're going to go ahead to the next slide, and I believe yeah. So again, I'll be happy to share anything with you guys, but this is a sample volunteer program evaluation form that we have used in the past here at the Lighthouse. And it's not just even evaluating them. Are they comfortable? It's also evaluating us as an organization. Do you feel that you are given the tools necessary to complete your task? The last slide. And I guess, does anybody have any questions or comments for me? I know we're coming up on the 3 o'clock hour, and I hope I didn't talk too much. And Audrey, if you want to go to the last slide, it's got all my contact information. If there's anybody that has any questions, I'm still here.
Okay, well, if there are any questions, and I think there are a few people in the chat box that asked for you to send over information, so I'll make sure that you get those email addresses. But again, I just want to say thank you so much for presenting today, and that I hope that everybody on the call found it beneficial. And again, please reach out to Lonnie if you have any more questions. I wanted to do just a final quick version of updates. This only pertains to VGS grantees. Again, just a reminder that all invoices are due the 15th of each month to per@volunteerflorida.org, and you are required to email in advance if you cannot submit or if it will be a late submission. The end of the year report will come out October 15th, is due October 15th, 2017, and sometime in September you'll be getting more information on how to submit that. And then the 2017-2018 funding cycle, Volunteer Florida anticipates another year of VGF funding with the RFP being released late summer. More information in the timeline on that process should be coming soon. So again, I just want to say thank you again to Lonnie and to everyone who was on the call today. If you have any questions, please contact me at audrey@volunteerflorida.org. And I will be emailing out a recording of this webinar to the entire VGF, RCAF, and AmeriCorps community later this week. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys.